Hello everyone, Scott Felton here, and this will be the first official upload on this new YouTube channel of mine, Conwy UFO Group, North Wales UFO Investigations. Fancy title, sounds elaborate, but such titles tend to be so these days, so I might as well join the crowd. You'll have to forgive me, I've got a bit of a remnant of a cold, so I'll be clearing my throat every now and then. So hope you'll bear with me on that one, and it won't detract too much from this video clip. Some people know me for my involvement in investigating the Berwyn Mountains UFO incident of the 23rd of January 1974. Now, this isn't particularly well known outside the UK, and remarkably there are some UFO enthusiasts even in Britain who don't seem to know about it. But essentially it's one of those cases where the government seems to have spent a lot of time and effort, and undoubtedly money, trying to bury it. It's one of those cases where no matter how hard they try, a bit like Rendlesham, they just cannot make the thing go away. And the chances are one of the reasons it won't go away is because it's real. I believe personally that the Berwyn Mountains UFO incident involved a extraterrestrial craft, a craft of extraterrestrial origin, which I came to believe actually landed on the Berwyn Mountains, stayed a while, and of its own volition left. From when the UFO was first discovered on the 23rd of January 1974, a local district nurse, Pat Evans, she was accredited with discovering the UFO on the side of Cadair Berwyn. Now, Cadair Berwyn is a peak, a mountain in the Berwyn Range. The Berwyn Range is roughly a north-south range of hills, really. There's 4 peaks: Moelferna, Cadair Bronwyn, sometimes referred to as Cadair Bronwyn, but that's Welsh grammar. Cadair Berwyn, which is the highest peak, and also a sub-peak of Cadair Berwyn, Moelsych, which basically means the dry ball hill, and Moelsych is actually more or less the same height as Cadair Berwyn. This particular stretch of hills is about 10 miles, 12 miles long, and they're wedged between the A5 trunk road, which is the London to Holyhead road, which cuts through North Wales, and another road, the B4391, which goes from Bala over the range at the southern end, goes through a village called Llangunnog and heads off towards the English border. In 1974, quick overview of it, in 1974, 23rd of January, certain events occurred, some of which were natural and unplanned for. Seemingly the most obvious one was a meteor shower that occurred that night, and those meteors eventually became useful for trying to debunk what people had been claiming they'd seen. It turned out that, certainly in my investigations, that the meteor shower was convenient because it was actually intended to be a cover story, and the 23rd of January was chosen out of one night out of many to execute a intervention by the military to get up close and personal with this UFO. Now, since 1974, this event was always regarded as a crash. The event was pretty low key, really. Certain debunkers, like Andy Roberts, for instance, a well-known Berwyn debunker, he claimed in one write-up that there was never any talk of UFOs and such like until the 1990s. It was a load of rubbish, really, because the people of the affected villages, shall we say, in the Berwyn area, Llandrillo, Llanderfel and the larger town of Bala, soon heard from school, that from Pat Evans' daughters, that they thought it could have been a flying saucer of some sort that they witnessed on the side of the mountain. So that was a bit of a lie on Andy Roberts' part. He tried to distort the truth. Now, it is true that the case lay dormant for some years until Margaret Fry started delving into it and started to uncover some facts about it, which suggested it may have been a UFO incident. She brought it to the attention of Jenny Randalls, who was involved with before it at the time. Now, Jenny Randalls seized upon the case and tried to make it her own, and then for whatever reason tried to pass off the object that Pat Evans saw on the side of Berwyn as earth lights, because on that evening there was also an earth tremor, quite a large one. Now, some people, some UFO enthusiasts, looked at reports of that, police reports, geological reports, and there were records of some locals claiming they heard an explosion sound amidst the rumblings, which lasted about 10 seconds. This also led to other events where the authorities believed a plane had crashed and they were on one mountain and the military were on another, and all this sort of business. But the UFO enthusiasts seized upon this explosion and subsequent air tremor as evidence of an impacting UFO. Now, when I first got involved with this, I collaborated with Margaret Fry, and she'd amassed a huge amount of information about the Berwyn event at the time. There's no question about it. She was the premier authority on the event. She'd interviewed lots of people, lots of witnesses, Pat Evans amongst them, and as I say, she'd amassed all this information. Now, of course, Margaret Fry is a bit of a veteran. She's getting on in years now, and she didn't have the investigative tools that we would have today, such as the internet. So when I was going through her information, there were gaps in it. It had just proven too difficult to try and follow up and investigate some of the claims people had made, and some of the information. You know, it would take weeks to find a simple fact that you could locate in minutes now online. So there was these gaps. So I collaborated with Margaret. We went through all the information, and one of the issues that Margaret Fry had was that she introduced me to the concept of a UFO crashing on Cadair Berwyn. One UFO, just one, and that UFO crashed as a result of a military naval engagement in the Irish Sea, linked geographically to a tiny lump of rock called Puffin Island, which is just a couple of 100 yards or so, 800 yards max, off the coast of Anglesey. It's in very shallow water, Conwy Bay. It's almost high and dry when the tide goes out. The water's never more than 35-40 feet deep at high tide, and obviously then only for a few minutes because the tide starts to ebb again. And in fact the whole area of Eastern Anglesey is relatively shallow, and it's littered with shipwrecks such as it's past. It's not a very nice place to be in a boat if you don't know where you are and know what you're doing. It's certainly off limits to large warships. However, Margaret told me, related this story, that a guy called John Williams had approached her in 1997 with this amazing story of how the UFO on Cadair Berwyn came to crash. And for all intents and purposes, if you didn't know any different, it was a fantastic story, but perhaps perfectly credible. But of course, extraordinary claims of course require extraordinary evidence, and essentially this John Williams related the story to her that a military operation was taking place in the Irish Sea, where ships were hunting UFOs that were submerged with the intention of flushing them out. Why they would want to do that I don't know, whether it was to engage them, whether it was just to chase them off, capture them, I don't know. But anyway, the story she related to me, as given to her by this John Williams, was that John Williams possessed information, documents, maps and things, which he was given by 5 professional gentlemen, sometimes called 5 wise men. I prefer to use an expression that was created by a colleague of mine in this investigation, 5 wise monkeys. Essentially, as far as I'm concerned, they don't exist at all. They never existed. However, these 5 monkeys gave information to this John Williams that they had witnessed the UFO being recovered off Cadair Berwyn. There were alien bodies, dead and alive, and this recovery operation took some time. It's led to rumours that part of the mountain was sealed off, and people were, farmers and public were excluded while this operation took place. It seems that it's all a load of rubbish, a lot of disinformation involved. One of the people who supplied the information to Margaret Fry, or rather information that backed up what Margaret Fry had been told, was Tony Dodd. He'd received information anonymously that military unit was on standby in the south of England. Then it was moved up to Chester. Then they were ordered to go to Llanderfel, and their job was to recover some alien corpses and the story goes they loaded them into boxes and took them off to Porton Down, which is a biological research place. There was other bits of stuff in the story. They were told not to stop, and they did stop, and then they were threatened by armed people to carry on, deliver the boxes, and then a bizarre thing again, they arrive at the destination, and then they were privy to one of the boxes being opened, and inside is this alien in a body bag. Well, you don't take potentially dangerous biomaterial to a top secret biological place and then open the box in front of everyone under non-sterile conditions, no containment conditions, and you certainly don't allow the delivery boys to see the contents. It's just totally ludicrous. However, this is what an informant to Tony Dodd claimed, and Tony Dodd informed Margaret Fry of this story, and it was meant to reinforce the idea that this scenario was real. Anyway, essentially the naval operation at sea were hunting UFOs that were submerged under the water. They flushed 2 out near Puffin Island. 1 disappeared and 1 hung around. There was an exchange of fire. One of these ships was damaged, totally unnamed of course, not a single shred of evidence that these ships ever existed. Naval ratings were killed and wounded. No records of people who were wounded, no records of people who were killed, and this UFO was damaged. It was then pursued across Anglesey, chased across back to the mainland, chased across North Wales, and eventually came to crash on Cad Berwyn. That story remained quite believable to a lot of people for some years, but Margaret Fry actually had this story in 1997. She was a little bit suspicious about it, and by 1999 she'd washed the hands of JW, John Williams. He likes to be called JW, because she was suspicious that the whole thing was a load of baloney. John Williams had also tried to coerce a filmmaker into turning it into a bit of a documentary, a short film, and it was clear that Margaret Fry, who was the foremost investigator of this case, had been targeted with what was essentially a disinformation program. They seemed desperate to get it into the public domain, and it failed with Margaret. She was the perfect vehicle to convey all this into the public domain. And the filmmaker, I'll come to him in another video, he also got suspicious and dumped JW, and JW had nothing. But then along came a guy who was interested in UFOs, a Yorkshire lad, Russ Kellett. Now, many people who look at this video will know Russ Kellett. He's one of those guys, you'll either love him or you hate him, but he took up the reins of this case, and JW then concentrated on Russ. He gave him everything he wanted to know, documentation, witness testimony of these 5 monkeys, and Russ took it up where everyone else had dumped it. It was just a ludicrous story, but nonetheless Russ took it as his own, and he was so willing and so keen. John Williams didn't have to bother with anyone else. Russ was the perfect willing conduit into the UFO community, and the whole thing was disinformation. But what was disturbing about it was that it was a hoax, but it was a huge hoax, carefully planned and executed. And one has to think, why would someone go to such extraordinary lengths to create such a huge hoax? And for me personally, I'm not surprised, because the Berwyn case just won't go away, and the authorities seem to have gone to the most extraordinary lengths to do anything they can to try and bury, rubbish, debunk this event, and anyone else who tries to investigate it. The only people who don't get debunked are the ones who are damaging to that particular case and are damaging to ufology in a wider, more general sense. They like to be left well alone, let them get on with it. If they're doing damage because of the way they project themselves, or their information is duff or whatever, fine. If it's causing chaos in the UFO community, the authorities are quite happy for such people to carry on. In the case of Russ Kellett, I would stress at this point that Russ Kellett isn't a hoaxer. He's not a hoaxer at all. What he has been is a gullible straw man who's conveyed information into the UFO community, believing that this event is real. I used to think of Russ as actually as a quite thorough investigator. So it came as quite a surprise when, in the course of events, I was looking at Russ's investigation. It's very patchy, because Russ is a bit of a hoarder. He collects information. He's like, this, mine, but he never gives anything. And I have to admit, I've got a personal thing now, because he once threatened me over the phone because I queried some footage he had. That was some years ago. And he also reduced Margaret Fry. She's an old lady. He reduced her to tears one day because she'd lent him some information in good faith, and being a hoarder he is, he kept it. She saw he was misusing it. She wanted it back, and he just hailed this torrent of expletives at her down the phone, threatening her, he was going to beat her up and all this sort of business, because the information she'd given it to him. It wasn't loaned. And Margaret insists that she only lent it to him for him to research, and then he was involved in the promotion of this hoax, and she didn't like the way he was using it, and then it all exploded from there. So Margaret Fry's a very good friend of mine. We collaborate on everything. I mean, I've even looked after a cat before now when she's gone away. But I won't stand for anyone sort of attacking old people, especially, and old ladies for that matter, just because someone's trying to prove themselves that they have information about an event which is quite clearly a hoax. Anyway, going back to this military operation, Russ Kellett swallowed it hook, line and sinker. He believed that this military operation took place. John Williams coerced Russ Kellett into approaching Holyhead Coast Guard. Now, at the time of the event in 1974, there were several Coast Guard stations around the Irish Sea on the British side, because of course on the western side of the Irish Sea we've got the Irish Republic, which is a totally different sovereign state, and that has its own territorial waters as well as Britain. Russ contacted Holyhead Coast Guard. There seemed to have been a series of exchange of letters. I'll show the letter in a minute. But I mean, one of the letters, dated April 2000, was particularly interesting, because the Holyhead Coast Guard has used it ever since to supply enquirers about this military operation. But the letter, when it first appeared, was highly suspicious. The letterheads didn't appear to be right. It looked like it had been copied and pasted. The address part of it, the sender, recipient, was all out of place. The format was totally wrong. The grammar was shocking. It was all crammed into one small space, and you could have got 3 paragraphs out of it. Any literate person would have produced 3 paragraphs out of that, minimum. And the letter was written in italic font, italic typeface. I mean, it was so poorly drafted, a blind man could see there was something wrong with it. However, when Russ Kellett received this letter following his enquiries from Holyhead Coast Guard, he thought he had the Holy Grail, because this letter seemed to confirm the alleged military operation in the Irish Sea on the night of the 23rd of January 1974. Not only that, it suggested that the events were recorded in a logbook, and that this logbook had been consulted, and that's where the information in the letter came from. But unusual for Russ, he once he had that letter, he seemed to have lost the plot, because he didn't seem to contact anybody else. And I believe at this stage that he was told by John Williams that he didn't need to go any further than Holyhead. Now, people might ask, how could Russ Kellett be guaranteed to receive a letter from Holyhead that confirmed an operation that John Williams had told him about, if it didn't happen? Well, that clearly suggests that there's a connection between John Williams and someone in Holyhead Coast Guard. Holyhead Coast Guard were expecting Russ Kellett's enquiries, and a person, and we know it was a woman, drafted a letter, possibly working on her own, possibly with the knowledge of the station manager. That letter was sent officially to Russ Kellett, suggesting that logbooks were being accessed, and that this military exercise had taken place. No mention of hunting UFOs, it's just that they just said this military exercise took place in the Irish Sea. That seems to have all been a load of cock and bull, because this video clip's like a part 1. Since all this blew up quite recently, I filed a Freedom of Information request, a rather large one, to the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, which oversees the Coast Guards, down in Southampton, and the request was referred to some guy called Raymond Carson at Holyhead Coast Guard. He's been around for years, so it's quite inconceivable that he didn't know that this letter had been drafted, authored and posted out in April 2000, along with other letters that were just a little bit before. There was a bit of toing and froing. Now then, he must have known this. He receives my Freedom of Information request, and I received back, at the last possible legal moment, one of the worst responses I've ever received from a government agency. It was so evasive, so rubbish, it was virtually useless. So I pretty soon after launched a review, demanded a review, and I lambasted the MCA for the quality of the information supplied at that point, and told them I expect a lot more. This Raymond Carson, he didn't cooperate at all. He was grossly obstructive when he was very carefully crafted his words to make it look like he was cooperating, but in fact he was giving me a crock of shite, really. And I'm not having it. I've spent lots of time sending lots of freedom of information requests to lots of government agencies, organisations, and I do have a top 3 of obstruction, poor responses. By and large, organisations like the military, the Ministry of Defence, as an example, they might not have been keen on giving me the information I requested, but they did give me as much information as they could. They were always polite about it. They were as comprehensive as they could be, and as clear and unambiguous as they could be. And then you get a crappy little Coast Guard station on the periphery of the Irish Sea, some outpost away in North Wales here, and you've got this clown thinking he's going to deny me information about an operation which he knows full well about and which is a hoax. And I believe that this guy is privy to the fact that this is a hoax. Anyway, he gave me some crap information, of which I obviously demanded a review of, and that's ongoing. So all that's going to be in a part 2 vid. So look out for that, because a lot of names are going to be named. All the documents are going to be on the film. People who know me, I don't believe in secrecy. If someone needs to be held to account, I name names, and I'll be putting the names of every single person up in lights who's involved in this outrageous disinformation program. Anyway, Russ Kellis got this letter back, and not only did they seem to confirm a military operation in the Irish Sea, they gave it a name, and they called it Operation Photoflash. Now that's a bit peculiar in its own right, because military operations are often given code names. In fact, it's quite normal. But the actual exercise, we can call it that, involved the use of photoflash bombs. These bombs illuminate the surface of the sea. A bit of a problem, because there's some claim that these bombs also illuminate the bottom of the sea. I don't really know about that yet. I'm getting conflicting information about that now. And they come in different sizes and different powers. Basically, these bombs go off like flares, illuminate a target, so they can be shot up, bombed, or whatever. But it's bizarre, most unusual, that a photoflash bombing exercise would be called Operation Photoflash. It appears that Holyhead Coast Guard needed a code name for this operation to make it look plausible, so they just called it Operation Photoflash, which is totally ludicrous. So Russ Kelly gets a letter seemingly confirming this military operation was underway, and it was called Operation Photoflash. Of course, he inquires as to what photoflash bombs do. They illuminate targets. He puts 2 and 2 together, makes 5, and what we have is a fictitious, perhaps, military operation in the Irish Sea illuminating targets. And he's got this other version from John Williams saying a military operation took place in the Irish Sea off the coast of North Wales, and they were flushing UFOs out of the sea, and you end up with a crashed UFO on Cadair Berwyn. Now this went on for quite a while. The first instance of the name Operation Photoflash being used in an official looking context was in this letter in April 2000. Russ has gone ballistic since then. He thinks he's got the Holy Grail. There was this mad operation, and John Williams carried on feeding Russ Kellett information, duff information, every now and then snippets, like a little baited trail, just to reinforce what he'd discovered. Russ also took several anonymous phone calls from people who were involved in the military operation at sea and involved in the military clean-up operation on Cadair Berwyn. However, by 2006, I'd started putting it about that I didn't believe there was a crash on Cadair Berwyn. I believed it was a landing. No one could predict where a vehicle was going to crash if it was actually shot up at sea. So you couldn't possibly have a unit of soldiers more or less ready and waiting. Yet there seems to be substantial evidence that there was a military unit on Cadair Berwyn where this UFO was, which Pat Evans saw. And one has to think, well, how did they get there? How did they know? But they couldn't predict anything. And I eventually concluded that they were waiting for this UFO to land because it had been coming down regularly, and that's how they got to know where it was coming down. And they chose the 23rd of January because there was a meteor shower that night, and that would have been part of any cover story had it all gone wrong. There was a large number of police present in the village of Llanfrichlo, about 4 miles from the UFO, and it seems they might have been there to interfere with the public. If they got wind of anything going on, it was all hush hush, and certain events happened, like this earthquake and belief that a plane had crashed on Cadair Berwyn and all this, which sort of threw a spanner into the works for the authorities. And of course Pat Evans ended up going up where she went and discovering this UFO, which I think no one was meant to discover at all. Anyway, that was 2006. By 2008 I was pretty well convinced that a UFO landed on Cadair Berwyn, and about 90 minutes later departed of its own volition, or it could have been spooked by the approach of a military unit. But then the story started to change. There seemed to be a need to maintain the crash scenario. So the UFO that crashed on Cadair Berwyn, or landed, suddenly became a second UFO that crashed. And this UFO crashed at the side of the road a couple of 100 yards outside the village of Llanderfel. I'll cut in a short clip of the field in a bit in this film, where I actually went and filmed the crash location, alleged crash location, and you can see in the film that the claims were totally ludicrous. Anyway, these 5 wise men who allegedly discovered the Berwyn crash now had discovered the second crash rather than the first, on the side of the road outside Llanderfel. On information received, I was able to go to Llanderfel, locate the alleged crash site of this UFO and film it all. And the revised story from Russ Keller's point of view was that the 5 were wise men, professional men, monkeys, call them what you will, were all local lads. No one knows who they are, but they were all local. They were returning home from Bala, and as they were passing along the main road past Llanderfel, they spotted the UFO at the side of the road. Well, there is no side of the road. The river runs right up to the side of the road, and it's anywhere between 12 inches and 6 feet wide, the strip of land between the road and the River Dee. Beyond the River Dee is a field, and it's the only place this UFO could have been. Now, I got some information, some footage from a film which Russ had been involved in the making, and it was so simple just to match up the background. It was child's play. And he's there in this film saying, this is the field that the UFO crashed in, blah blah blah. And then there was 2 versions of the story. These 5 monkeys came along the road, they spotted the UFO on the side of the road. That then became the UFO was in the field beyond, and they went into the field. They went presumably right up to this wreck of a spaceship, noticed dead and live aliens. They claimed that these aliens had coveralls on and what looked like sidearms, and even insignia on their attire. And then the military shows up and tells these guys to get lost, and then they spent 20 years investigating what they saw, eventually passing the information on to JW, John Williams, who then eventually tried to seed this information into the UFO community. An alternative version was that these guys came along the road, met a roadblock, the details were taken and they were told to get lost. I'll just mention as well that before I go off here, that I seem to have had a minor victory this week. Here in North Wales, there's a newspaper called the Leader. It used to be called the Wrexham Leader, and there's the North Wales edition of the Daily Post. Over the years, these 2 papers have consistently saluted the 23rd of January anniversaries of the Berwyn event by running stories. It used to be Andy Roberts, because he was the go-to guy for his official version of events, which was all disinformation, a plethora of lies and manipulations. And in some years the papers used Russ Keller's version of events, this Photoflash rubbish, often with a picture of him posing with a blob of previously melted metal, which he claims came from the flying saucer, the UFO, call it what you will. Russ also claims to have a piece of a turbine out of a Harrier engine, which someone told them was the one shot down over Capel Kiddig, but he's never showed it, he's never produced it, and if it was produced, someone could tell straight away which model of which version of a Harrier jump jet it came from, and I put my last pound on that it would not fit a Harrier jump jet that was operational in 1974. But anyway, I sent a letter to the Wrexham Leader and the North Wales Daily Post last Monday, which was the 19th of January, 2015, and led the Wrexham Leader and the Northwest Daily Post to evidence that the Photoflash operation was a hoax, and that it's up to them, but the cat was out the bag and they could no longer justify promoting this hoax, because they've now been informed that it is a hoax. The evidence was in front of them. They could see the evidence, they could see the proof, and therefore if they continued to promote this government disinformation hoax, they will be doing a disservice to the readers and to the UFO community. For the first time, as far back as I can remember, when the Wrexham Leader came out and the Northwest Daily Post, nothing appeared on Friday the 23rd, and I will check again later today, which is the 24th, but there was nothing online on the online versions, there was nothing in the hard copy versions of the papers, and I will check again today just in case they haven't taken heed of for the information. But I think from now on we won't be seeing any more stories in the North Wales press about Operation Photoflash. Certainly not promoting Russ Kellett and his blob of melted aluminium. Right, Russ Kellett's field, allegedly. I think he's trying to be a bit devious when he was making this film. In one little bit of the film, I sensed there was a stream quite close to behind where he was standing, but it turns out it's the River Dee, and I think he deliberately tried to keep the River Dee out of his image, out of his filming, to try and disguise the actual location of this field. I'll zoom in there. Now, one of the problems with this field, of course, is that it's banked by the River Dee, and where he's actually posing in front of it is inaccessible to any vehicle, and where that wall is in the distance there, because it's on the other side of the river, the entrance to that large field must be on that side of the river, and presumably up beyond that wall, so I'll be going up there in a minute. But assuming he's telling the truth, this field here he's claiming a flying saucer crashed into on the night of 23rd of January 1974. And personally, I think it's an absolute load of bollocks. Right next to this main road here, the B4410, which crosses the River Dee up there on the bridge. Van der Velde is there in the background, and he's trying to tell me that there's a recovery operation took place on the UFO. The recovery of aliens, dead and alive, and except for 5 inverted commas wise men who were part of this hoax, nobody else saw a thing in this location. Well, that's an absolute load of rubbish, because Pat Evans herself came from this village out onto the main road there to turn up by Pala Hall over there to take the Llangunnog road, to be 4491, the 4391, sorry, up over the Berwyns, where she discovered her UFO, which is the real Berwyn UFO. She would have seen what was going on here easily coming out of that village, and everybody else, because everybody was out when that earthquake was on. Right, what we've got here is an attempt to match up some information on film I have of Russ Kellett standing where he claims a UFO crashed in a field. Now, in one clip he's he's actually stood in front of those road signs there, and the camera looking down on him filming seems to be from an elevated position. It turns out it's the war memorial, and he very carefully kept the river bridge out of the scene. In the film he claims this field here, which is actually across the river, was where this UFO landed, and I've matched up that road marker and the very distinctive stones there. He poses in front of those, but in such a way that the river is hardly visible. You can see a bit of bank over there. That does show up in the film. The vegetation is different because it was a few years ago when his film was taken, at least prior to 2008. The version I saw was 2008. Slightly better view there. That appears in the clip. Let's see. There's no question about that. The marker and those stones. He did actively keep the river out, as I said, to try and belie where this field was. I mean, you'd have to be absolutely stupid to come down this road here and not realise something was going on there. And he claims a recovery operation took place. So we're going to have a look on that field in a minute. But there you go. That's pretty much matched up. Just another angle of the Kellett UFO field, taking off the bridge over the River Dee. I'll just do a bit of a panorama. So we'll go on to that field in a minute. Zoom in a bit. Another pan. I've just come over the Dee bridge there. I'm looking up the road now. This is still the same field here. There we go. Now it looks like, I'll find out in a minute, it looks like that's the track into the field, which means a flatbed lorry entered the field over there. Zoom in there, somewhere by there. It's just about to see a gate, so I'm going to check that out. But also, if you look down here, you can see the field is about 10 feet below the road. There's a little arch in the wall there, because this field is actually a floodplain of the Dee, and although the sheep have been passing through that tunnel, this tunnel here is to allow water to run out on the other side there. You can see there's more of the river there, so we'll just go up there and have a look and see what there is to see. Right, I've just come along the road there, and that track into the field is actually from this gate. There is another gate a little higher up this lane, I'll just go up there in a minute, which seems to go to a farm behind here, which begs the question, if the army came up this lane, this little track here, to access that field, and I've just noticed there's a quite considerable ditch cutting across the field as well, which they have had to negotiate. How come the farmer didn't know? There's absolutely no way that anyone would have come up this track in vehicles, in numbers, and go unnoticed. Just have a little walk up this lane, this track. There are tyre tracks here from farm vehicles Actually, they do come up here every now and then, but there's lots of grass growing in it, so it's only used occasionally. This isn't in modern times, of course. Let's see what there is to see. Now I suspect... excellent. All that down there is the old railway line to Bala and onto Dolgellau and Barmouth. It actually goes up the valley, or down the valley rather, to Corwen, Llangollen, and it joins the main line between North and South Wales near Rwabon. This was closed to passengers in, I think, 1968, I think it was, and the final goods train ran along it in 71. And I know for a fact that the railway line was lifted in most places before 1974. The UFO was in this field here. It was either in bits, in big chunks, it was hovering and it was lifted onto the back of the low loader, or as one claim I heard, that a British military person actually got inside the thing and flew it off the floor and landed it on the back of the lorry. All very interesting. Now this is the only access into this field that I can find. There's looking down towards the river bridge there. Yep. There's buildings there. So I reckon they look a bit derelict at the moment. No, they don't. They look like it's a recent renovation. I think this is part of Palais Hall, but I'll check this when I get home. That's the other side of the railway embankment down there. So let's have a look in this field. This is the gate in. Now, in order for any wagons to come in here, they would have to come in here, negotiate this tight bend through this gate, and make their way down the field there, and that's how the field is accessed. Let's pan along. These are the arches along the road here which allow the floodplain field, the field that Kelly claims the UFO was on. Just as well this field wasn't in flood when the UFO crashed the ground. It might have made a bit of a splash. Yeah, things don't add up. From what I can see, this is the only entrance. Even if a lorry couldn't negotiate that and had to come over this old railway bridge, it would have to have come through someone's property. So unless they were part of the conspiracy, it's just not happening. Nice old oak tree there. Let's just pan along there. A little scraggly hawthorn there. This is the path up to the gate. You'd have to do a sharp 90 degrees through the gate and then a sharp 90 degrees again left, just to go towards the road. I don't think that's happening at all. This is the track down, stream there that comes under the railway. The original railway fence there, you can still see the wires. The railway's been closed since 1971. Axed under beaching. this is the access into the field now, down this slope. There's the little ditch I mentioned earlier. It's a bit dry at the moment, but that lorry would have to have come over this, and all removing a UFO without anyone noticing. I doubt very much a tractor and a cart might get across this. I mean, that's quite a modern pipe anyway. But imagine the weight of a lorry, plus getting this traction up there, plus the weight of a UFO on it. We don't actually know what that sort of thing weighs, but it must have some weight. Add to the total. And it was recovered from this field somewhere. Cheeky laugh now. This is the only alien that's ever been in this field. It's an alien plant invading Britain called Himalayan multi-viable weed, but it does grow everywhere in damp places. Yeah, this is the railway embankment. Came up here. There's a gate here, an old farm crossing onto the field. I dare say it might have been active in 1974. It would have been active when the line was open anyway. So it's possible something even came through this gate, but judging by the width of it, I mean, they're proper posts. They're the original posts. They've never moved. The gate has never been extended. And that's the original gate over there. I'll zoom in on that. There's the old typical railway pieces of wood there. Fashion of the day. This is Pally Hall. Definitely the way the grounds are set out in a stately home design. This is the field. It seems that that was the only entrance onto the field. In and out. That was of any practical use. If anything came through this, it would have to pass properties, buildings, across private land. People would be asking questions. So I fail to see how anyone could actually sneak onto this land unnoticed and remove a large object on the back of a lorry. So I'm just panning the camcorder around, just where that car is now. There's that mirror there. Just where the car went out of sight is that little track into the field. This stoneware here is the railway bridge. The old railway bridge. There's an old path there. It's going down onto the track. That's the old track bed down there. And over here, and what is particularly interesting as well, which adds another mystery to the tale, which undermines a little bit Russ's claims. We have the problem of all the people in the village leaving the village and seeing what was going on in the field. We have the problem of ordinary members of the public coming along this road, and we have the Brinterion pub. Now when Pat Evans come up here out of Llanderfel, which is just behind me, for a quarter of a mile, she turned up that road there going towards the B4391, and that would take her up over the Berwyns, and that's where she saw a UFO. This is the actual entrance to Pally Hall, which was a stately home in past times. So we got the case of the revellers there, Here's the lodge house here. People at the hall, the village totally surrounded. Everyone claims that people came out of the houses when this earthquake was on. We're looking at lights in the sky. It's amazing. Out of all those people, 5 unidentified men coming from Bala happened upon this UFO, and no one else saw a thing. No names being put to faces or anything. Remarkable. I think that just about concludes it.